Welcome to Doug in Exile, and God bless you. I'm Doug TeNapel. This is where the happy patriots are. I found the old court case from last year with Alvin Bragg and Juan Merchan.
He'll be charged with something he didn't do. We know that for a fact from Michael Cohen himself and his lawyers. But I think it's going to be a books and records kind of charge. And knowing Alvin Bragg, the Soros-backed DA, I assume that he's going to try and stack several of these misdemeanors that a normal person would never be indicted for, let alone charged with.
And this is new information. It's going back to court, being questioned, and Trump's still trying to get it overturned. Here's the article by the great Jonathan Turley, who I just think is a real clear thinker on everything. I like almost everything he does and everything he writes. Here's Second Circuit to hear Trump appeal from New York criminal case. Today, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit will hear oral arguments on a threshold issue in the criminal case against President Donald Trump in New York. The case is still pending in New York court system after his sentencing, but President Trump wants the case removed to federal court. He is relying on last year's presidential immunity decision and arguing the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg tripped a wire by calling former White House aides as witnesses. Now that we actually went into that little detail, it's really weird. His calling in of witnesses was supposedly some kind of an illegal move that could get the case thrown out. Now, one thing that Jonathan Turley didn't do is he didn't give you an overview of the case before he starts. So I brought up some historical facts here, and we'll go over them together too. It's just so you know, what is that case about? And then we'll get back to the breakthrough review of it, just so that we're clear on it. In 2024, former President Donald Trump was convicted in a Manhattan criminal case prosecuted by District Attorney Alvin Bragg and overseen by Judge Juan Merchan. The case centered on 34, these were very made up counts. They're basically one count that broke out 34 times.
There was misconduct by the jurors, and it would have anything thrown out. Judge Merchan's description of what happened and what falls under the Supreme Court's decision is so flawed and egregious and so ridiculous. He is completely disregarding the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court that said that there is presidential immunity for official acts. And now he is trying to carve out in any way he can to preserve face and say that this trial was not a complete hoax, was not a complete disaster, an evidentiary disaster. And now we know there were issues with the jury being tainted.
Of the same thing, of falsifying business records related to a $130,000 hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Remember, this was ancient news, and they brought it up after he announced that he was running for president. So they made up these charges. The payment made by Trump's then lawyer, Michael Cohen. Remember, we've had him on too, and he's turned on Trump, and that he came out for Trump saying he did not go to E Island and all that, or wasn't guilty of whatever, aimed to silence Daniels about an alleged 2006, that's 20 years ago, encounter with Trump ahead of the 2016 presidential election. So they're saying that Trump tried to get ahead of this, paid her through his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and they're saying that he didn't claim it on his taxes as part of his campaign. The defense said that Trump had a lot of reasons to not let even this out. Even if it was a rumor, if it was false, he still wouldn't want Melania to know about it or the voters. He gave her Stormy Daniels a non-disclosure agreement. And again, I'm not weighing in on if I think he's innocent or guilty of that. I only know that Trump, no matter what, has had a ton of people launch these kinds of lawsuits against him, and all of them are, they want money. Prosecutors argued that Trump falsified records to conceal the reimbursement to Cohen, mislabeling them as legal fees with intent to violate federal campaign finance laws and influence the election. See that's where they're getting him as an election, that he was influencing them just like Russia. The trial began in April of 2024. That's last year. Remember, they were loading up all of these election interference cases, trying to influence the election, and instead it just all backfired on him. It made Trump a martyr. It made him a sympathetic figure. It brought a lot of people from the middle class that thought it was unfair to his side. By May 30th of 2024, Trump was found guilty on all counts. So all 34 counts, marking the first criminal conviction of a former U.S. president. Key issues during the trial included Merchan's rulings, such as imposing a gag order on Trump to prevent public attacks on witnesses and court staff, and denying multiple defense motions for his recusal due to alleged bias. That was Trump was saying Merchan should recuse himself because his daughter, remember, was the one that was organizing major contributions to Democrats and Democrat Party. And Merchan didn't step down. He was obviously an operative of the Democrat Party. And then they were trying to gag him from even replying to that, to take away his First Amendment right of free speech. Trump's legal team argued the case was politically motivated, citing Bragg's ties to Democrat causes and Merchan's minor donations to Democrats, but these claims were all rejected. Sentencing faced repeated delays due to Trump's 2024 election victory and a Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity. And that's what Trump's trying to still use in this case, which prompted debates over whether conviction could be dismissed. Bragg proposed options to preserve the conviction, including deferring sentencing until after Trump's second term in 2029 or using an abatement procedure to note the conviction without further action. On January 10th, that's this year, Merchan sentenced Trump to an unconditional discharge, meaning no fines, prison time, or probation, but the felony conviction remained on his record. Trump has maintained his innocence, denied the affair, and called the case a politically driven witch hunt. The conviction's long-term impact remains subject to potential appeals. Now, this is going to continue because Trump wants his name cleared now, and I think it's important that our justice system clear his name if this was indeed politically driven, merely politically driven, and I believe it is. Back to Jonathan Turley article. Now that you've been caught up on what the whole thing was, because Trump had so many lawsuits against him, we have to keep them separate from each other. Last year, the Supreme Court issued a historic decision in Trump versus United States defining the scope of presidential immunity. The court found that there was absolute immunity for actions that fall within their exclusive sphere of constitutional authority. While they enjoy presumptive immunity for other official acts, they do not enjoy immunity for unofficial or private actions. The court has often adopted tiered approaches in balancing the powers of the branches. For example, in his famous occurrence in Youngstown Sheet and Tube, Justice Robert Jackson broke down the line of authority between Congress and the White House into three groups where the president is acting with express or implied authority from Congress, where Congress is silent, the zone of twilight area, they call it, and where the president is acting in defiance of Congress. Here, the court separated cases into actions taken in core areas of executive authority, official actions taken outside of those core areas, and then unofficial actions, actions deemed personal or unofficial, are not protected under this ruling. And this, I don't see how this could be official, gang. If this is from Stormy in 2006, this is while Trump was still running for office in 2016. So he wouldn't have presidential immunity if he wasn't president yet. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. Trump is arguing that he is protected by presidential immunity and that this matter should be heard in federal court. He's citing Bragg's calling of former White House communications director Hope Hicks and the former executive assistant Madeleine Westerthout as witnesses to discuss matters that are occurring in the White House and during Trump's first term. That's important. Those are the two witnesses where Alvin Bragg overreached, and here's why. If this is supposed to be about Trump before the election, right, to keep it personal so that presidential immunity doesn't kick in, they can't bring in two aides as witnesses, have them testify before the jury, and then Juan Merchan says, oh, throw all that out, pretend like you didn't hear it. But those two witnesses were under Trump during his presidential immunity because he was president when Hope Hicks was working for him. So they wouldn't be allowed to bring it into court. And that's why Trump's trying to throw this thing out on those grounds. That's the importance of those. And I said back during the court case when they called those two witnesses out and they said that Trump, has presidential immunity, I believed that's evidence that they should be thrown out at that time. So that could be poisoning the jury with information and data that happened during Trump's election. If that's part of what caused him to get hung, part of what caused him to get convicted, then that is that is a case made to be thrown out. Bragg is arguing it's too late for such removal of those testimonies. Trump's prior efforts at removal have failed. The argument will be heard before judges Raymond J. Lohier, Susan L. Carney, and Myrna Perez. This is a difficult case to make at this stage of the case. If Trump loses, the criminal case will continue through the state system and may eventually find its way to the Supreme Court. Good. I have long been a critic of the case, and there are strong grounds to appeal. For example, Judge Juan Merchan effectively guaranteed a conviction by telling jurors they did not have to agree with specificity on what had occurred in the case to convict Trump. The only way to get beyond the passage of the statute of limitations on the dead misdemeanor for falsifying business record has been to allege that the bookkeeping violation in question occurred to conceal another crime. That's why. And then Alvin Bragg had to do work on the concealment part of it, of another crime. Bragg did not bother to state clearly what that crime was, originally alluding to 4 different crimes. But you have to be specific. It was not until the end of the case that Merchan would lay out 3 possible crimes for the jury, all the way up to the final instructions in the case. Legal analysts on CNN and other outlets expressed doubt about what the actual theory of the criminal conduct was in the case. Despite spending little time on these secondary crimes at trial, Merchan told the jury that they could convict if they believed that invoices and other documents had been falsified to hide federal election violations, other falsification violations, or a tax violation. Those are the 3 crimes that they said. One of them might be right. That, of course, is not how you convict someone of anything in America. Our legal system is based on a horror that someone might be mistried of something and might get pinned on them. It's why the standards are so high to convict. You have to give absolute facts. The jury absolutely has to agree. And Juan Merchan said, you don't have to agree with any of the facts if you just generally believe it. This case has to be thrown out, guys. Ain't no way. Those are very different theories of a criminal conspiracy. Under one theory, Trump was hiding an affair with an actress with the payment of hush money before the election. Under another theory, he was trying to reduce a tax burden for someone else. That part was left hazy. As a third alternative, he might have falsified the documents to hide the falsification of other documents. A perfectly spellbinding circular theory. If those sound like they could be 3 different cases, then you're right. Yet Merchan told the jurors they did not have to agree on which pattern or conspiracy had occurred. They could split 4-4-4. That's the number of juries, 12 jurists, on the secondary crime motivation, the misdemeanors, and just declare that some secondary crime of any type was involved. Many of us are eager to see the New York system move this case, as well as the equally grotesque case by New York Attorney General Letitia James. The cases, however, continue to move forward at a glacial pace in the notoriously slow and corrupt New York legal system. Now you're all caught up on this court case that is back in New York. They're looking at again. I'm praying for an appeal or a dismissal, or that it gets sent up to the Supreme Court. If you guys want to keep covering this kind of material, I hope you've subscribed, because that's how you really help grow this channel, and it's how you tell me thank you for covering this news. I'm Doug in Exile.